Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Patriot One live corporate webinar. This is Will Mays from RB Milestone. Patriot One is an emerging disruptor in the stadium and public space security industry and has developed a multi-sensor threat detection platform. The shares trade on the TSX under the symbol PAT and on the OTCQX under PTOTF. Joining us today is the company's CEO and director, Peter Evans, who will be going through Patriot One's investor presentation. This will include an overview of current operations, recent achievements, and upcoming milestones. At the end of the presentation, we'll open up for questions for Peter to address. If you're interested in asking a question and are logged into the Zoom app or web platform, you can submit your questions to us directly in the Q&A module. Please note that this presentation is being recorded today, Wednesday, February 16th, 2022, and will soon be made available on the company's website at patriot1tech.com. That's patriot1tech.com. Today's call may contain forward-looking statements that are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results, performance, or developments to differ materially from those contained in the statements and are not guarantees of future performance of the company. No assurance can be given that any of these events anticipated by forward-looking statements will occur, or if they do, what benefit the company will obtain from them. Also, some risks and uncertainties may be out of control of the company. Patriot One has a full disclaimer contained in their presentation. Lastly, RBMG is not a registered investment advisor or broker-dealer. For more information, please visit rbmilestone.com. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Peter Evans, Chief Executive Officer of Patriot One. Peter, it's your stage.
Well, thank you very much, Will, and good afternoon to everyone who's listening in to us today. I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to join us. Let's start with a grounding of who we are and foundationally, what is Patriot One all about? We're all familiar in our environments, in our world, the way we live every day, of the impact of digital disruption on simple things like retail, banking, healthcare, e-commerce, these sorts of things. Digital disruption has fundamentally changed our expectations as a society and the outcomes for business. Patriot One is disrupting the physical security marketplace by leveraging the same sort of digital transformation innovations with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other technologies to change the way that physical security is delivered and radically enhance the patron's experience when they are now going through security screening activities. Ancillary benefits include things like optimizing security operational costs while significantly lowering security risks. We'll talk about that a bit more this afternoon and what we're doing to deliver this new value to the marketplace. Let's start with a little bit of setting the stage of why we exist and what we see as a fundamental problem in the marketplace today and how we're addressing it. On the left, every single person on this call has experienced this situation. On any given Sunday, we experience long lines, all sorts of kind of confusion, disruption at these entertainment experiences that we're now going to. These are no longer stadiums. These are entertainment experiences. The Super Bowl was held at a $5-6 billion stadium or arena called SoFi Stadium. But if you really look at that, it is not a stadium or arena, it is an entertainment experience. And for $400, $500, $600, $1,000 a seat, we expect more. The challenge is the approach that has been used to put patron security in place is based on technologies from 40 years ago and a labor-based business model that no longer applies in this day and age with our expectations. We're using digital innovation to transform this experience and increase the security process while radically enhancing the patron's experience, where people can simply walk right in and enjoy in the means they expect. A little bit more about why we invite our investors to listen to us today. The executive summary of the overall perspective of what we're delivering has a narrative that essentially says we're disrupting an existing marketplace where billions of dollars are currently being spent on antiquated approaches to delivering security. So there's a shift in revenue spend to much more effective solutions. This is not creating market, it's delivering an outcome better. That marketplace has very high barriers to entry, safety standards, DHS requirements, these sorts of things that are not easy to overcome. Right now, we see ourselves as the only provider with third-party verification and independently verified and proven technology to actually meet those security standards. And for our target market that we're going after initially, about a $4.6 billion market, those high barriers to entry give us an advantage and a competitive advantage that others do not have. The AI platform that we've put in place to enable our solutions, to provide the kinds of outcomes the customers are looking for, also sets a foundation in place for us to move into adjacent market spaces, where we see ourselves then playing into potentially a $135 billion market. The nice thing about all of this is the model that we've delivered this against with the software that we've delivered is based on a SaaS business model. That's a SaaS business model that provides recurring revenues and predictability in future revenues as we see exponential growth in those revenues. The most important thing out of all of this, though, from my perspective, is what does this mean to the customers? The customers themselves have worked with us and find themselves enjoying a very compelling ROI in terms of their overall costs, their revenues, and their ability to manage their businesses better. More importantly, the customers' customers are experiencing a high-value solution that makes their experience significantly better. So overall, we believe we're in a nice space for a growing market to move revenue spend or spending by the customers to a company like ours, where there's high barriers to entry in a revenue model that has a lot of predictability to it. So let's dig into this a little bit more and provide a lot more data and insights. The market situation today that we're playing into, the market problem that we're solving, is really got kind of a situation where there's conflict. We've seen this sort of conflict in a lot of marketplaces where it's physical security or cybersecurity. As society and the risks that are out there demand more in terms of safety and security and protection, that oftentimes is in conflict with experience. More security creates a lower experience. And so we'd say is knocking of heads, for argument's sake, between those who wish to serve the patrons better, or the employees better, or the students better, and those who wish to have increasing levels of security. The driver for more security needs are things like the increasing amount of gun violence. A day doesn't go by when we don't hear about another shooting. This is a tragedy. We see massive weapons proliferation, which, combined with the massive amounts of societal unrest that are going on these days, creates a very high-risk environment. And when we think of an environment like a sports stadium, for example, for argument's sake, an NFL stadium with 60,000 people, that's 3 times the size of the average town or city in North America. And yet all the demographics that you would have with the average town or city: people with malicious intent, people who are acting irrationally, people who are potentially predators. And we need to think about these risks in the environment and apply technology to solve a problem that cannot be solved. To address some of this, we're seeing various organizations like the DHS increasing the compliance mandates, which is making this more and more difficult for organizations. The result? Lengthy wait times for patrons, poor experiences, personal infringement. It's a labor-intensive business model, the way security is currently delivered, and labor-based models are non-profitable and they can only scale linearly. They don't scale well, and in fact, they perform poor with the more people applied to a problem. So we've got this reactive security response that doesn't address today's expectations and society's expectations and a patron's expectations when they go to an event. Patriot One has looked at the marketplace. In about March of last year, we took a hard look at our strategy. We got very hyper-focused on places that we thought we played best. We took inventory of the market, what our technologies is, what the different market segments we're doing, our channels to market, our partner arrangements, all these sorts of things, and determined that we would get hyper-focused on those marketplaces where there was the best opportunity and, quite frankly, a very, very tight product market alignment and product market fit in terms of not only the product, but the go-to-market strategies, the sales strategies, and the engagement strategies. Our selected segment is for those areas like stadiums, theaters, events, live entertainment venues, and this could also include more broadly things like Broadway theaters and other environments that show the same sort of characteristics as these. We're also doing extremely well in casinos, and the primary driver there is more and more accidental discharges or gun discharges going on in casinos, and everyone's concerned since the events of Mandalay Bay. An unpublished statistic is the fact that there's an accidental discharge or an intentional discharge every single day in North America at a casino. This is a travesty. And we have very strong inbound pipeline to go address that. And what we're starting to see is state legislation now jumping in to mandate these casinos that they have to put screening technologies in place to address this problem. And the older approach and the labor-based approach does not apply to these kinds of environment where the aesthetics are very important. So while these are the segments that we're hyper-focused on and targeting and aligned our whole business strategy around, which will create the growth you'll see in a few moments, we're also seeing aggressive inbound interest from the other segments below here, most specifically from manufacturing, distribution, and healthcare. The demographics of these segments suggest that the majority of the employees who work in these segments, particularly manufacturing and distribution, tend to be those who carry weapons. Now, the statistics also show us that from our work with these different organizations that they're experiencing about a fight per week per distribution center. And they live in fear that one of those fights might include a weapon. So the net here is we're very, very focused, hyper-focused on certain segments where there's a perfect product market fit, where we have competitive advantage, where we have certification and third-party validation advantage, but we're still engaged with other markets because of their interest and their demand. What this means to us is with our initial target market, we're playing into about a $4.6 billion market where we believe we have significant competitive advantage. As we continue to enhance our product portfolio and add incremental capabilities to us, that will expand us into adjacencies, into some of the other segments. And we can see ourselves expanding into about a $39.5 billion market, $40 billion market, into some of these expanded verticals. We're being very cautious not to spread too far, too fast, and be very, very focused on being the dominant player with referenceability that will take us into these next market spaces. These two first market environments up to $40 billion are primarily North America. As we continue to grow, we see expansion into global offerings and taking our value set out to the broader market, as well as leveraging the AI infrastructure that we've put in place for value-add services on top of that, which will take us into about a $135 billion market space. So let's talk a little bit about the customer and the ROI for the customer. At the most simplest levels, historically, if I look at just something like entry into a venue, that has been delivered with walk-through metal detectors with a lot of labor wrapped around that to screen every individual at a single person at a time basis. The result is high frustration, large crowds. Those crowds outside the venue are now the risk. The venue's responsibility does not stop at the walk-through metal detector. All those environments, like we saw in the charts earlier, are a soft target for risk. We saw that in various venues, such as an event that occurred with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, unfortunately, where the frustration of the crowd outside caused a threatening situation where people stormed the gates. A lot of frustration, a lot of delays, and very, very high security costs at a time when labor is difficult to come by with the great resignation that's occurring these days. In the Patriot One case, people streamed through. Fast, frictionless, no touch, with only those folks who actually are carrying a weapon being stopped and moved to secondary screening. The bulk of the patrons stream right in, just like they're walking down the street, just like they're walking into a hotel, just like walking to their front door, at walking speed or better. Ultimately, what this means for the customer is that you can increase patron throughput almost 7x, from about 500 people an hour to about 3,600 people an hour. Instead of 130% of all the patrons being screened and secondarily screened, typically we're seeing around 10% or so with all the trials and all the work and all the deployments we've done at various stadiums, casinos, and other locations. This creates a walk right in experience. And with some of the statistics we've looked at for the typical, large sports stadium, you could fill a stadium of 65,000 people in about 11 minutes if they all arrived at the same time, depending on how you set up the systems and the logistics. On the other hand, this offers the stadiums an opportunity at a time when there is challenges around staffing to reduce their staffing requirements. If I can get that many people in 7 times faster, I may not need as many lanes, therefore not as many staff, and I can optimize my staff and further provide with a solution, digital insights that are giving you insights about where are your lines, why are those lines forming, what is your kind of alert, what kind of weapons are you seeing, how does one event compare to another, and using all that digital insights to improve the overall patron experience, improve merchandising, for example, and reducing staffing or operational costs by optimizing with actionable insights from data. Advanced digital security provides us opportunity to create an end-to-end solution for both security, from the moment the patron first engages with a stadium to the day they arrive. And the same thing for security. So we can now become preemptive versus reactive in terms of security. Why do customers come to Patriot One? Ultimately, it's three key reasons. The first being enhanced security. The ability to provide better security than what is currently available today is critical to them. Things like the DHS Safety Act, the Pro League security standards are requirements for all leagues, which also have an umbrella effect on every other kind of organization out there. Third parties have validated that we actually exceed current screening technology today. The high quality AI and advanced business analytics also allow them to optimize better the staffing and things like this. So you take the potentially weakest link out of the equation, people and staffing. We've built a customer-centric business model, and through all the information that we've gained through all our engagements with our customers, a SaaS-based business model fits their model best. But more importantly, the expertise we bring, not only in terms of the technology, but also the people and processes armed with digital insights to optimize the whole security operations, is being seen as helping these customers of ours adopt technology faster. And finally, ultimately, it's all about the patron experience, the ability to stream people in faster and provide the maximum operational benefits in terms of getting the flow right, the costs, the staffing, and things like this, ultimately provides the customer's customer the best overall experience. How have we been doing? As I mentioned, in about March of last year, we sat down and we took inventory of all the assets in the company and those in terms of our relationship, the marketplace, and whatever unique segment is looking for. In March of last year, we were looking at about 4 pilots, barely, 7 contracts, marginal contracts, less than $1 million of backlog, and about $8 million of qualified pipeline. And quite frankly, about half of that we flushed because it was for segments where we didn't feel we had a very good product fit. Since then, in about the 10-month period, currently we're looking at about 31 pilots, about 23 contracts, about $5.8 million of backlog, and about a $42 million qualified pipeline. We're averaging about 1 closure for every 2 opportunities that we get to a certain level of qualification. So I'm very pleased with the momentum we've gained by getting the business line very, very hyper-focused. The pictures in the middle, this is the counterterrorism organization in New York who worked with us. You'll see Climate Pledge Arena. You'll see the NBA All-Star Game and the Summer League and things like this. We've been working very, very closely with these organizations to really understand what do they need in order to achieve approval for our technology to bring these values to them. Let's talk a little bit about some of the verifications that I mentioned earlier and some of these barriers to entry. The NCS4 is the National Center for Spectator Sports Safety and Security, based out of the University of Southern Mississippi. They work closely with the DHS, they work closely with Interpol, and they're funded by the pro sports leagues to provide objective analysis and best practices information and training programs for organizations to ensure that they're getting the best out of potential security solutions that are available. We worked with the pro sports leagues to gather their requirements in order to understand exactly what it takes for us to be an approved technology. We then developed that into a matrix and contract with NCS4 to validate and test that through an operational exercise to ensure that our performance matched the requirements. We weren't perfect. There were things we learned, but we felt it was best for the industry, particularly as the industry is going through this transition, to be very transparent about what we learned. And a lot of those lessons we were able to act on and further improve our product very, very quickly. Why is this important? Well, it's demonstrate our unique performance abilities and the requirements to meet those safety standards, right? It's also provided the information required and requested by the leagues in order to get league-wide approvals. And we will be the first and only, potentially only solution that will achieve league-wide approval for the professional sports league in North America, which we believe will have a halo effect and sort of spill over to other leagues around the globe and other organizations in the live entertainment environment. The most compelling conversation I had earlier this year in January was sitting with the CSO of one of the leagues, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "You realize once this approval is achieved, the floods of Jamestown are going to occur." I look forward to that day when those floods start to occur because we've prepared the business in expectation of that. So let's talk a little bit about the solution. We've talked about the marketplace. We've talked about the barriers to entry. We've talked about third-party verification and that we are in a very good position to go monopolize all our efforts into these marketplace. But what is it we do? Really, our portfolio breaks down into three key elements. The first being the multi-sensor gateway. These are essentially pillars that sit at an entranceway and they scan patrons as they walk through, watching for prohibited items. Think of it more like a weapons detection solution versus a metal detection solution. The average person will walk through, the average clutter that they have upon them, cell phone, watch, wallet, these sorts of things, and we can detect a weapon amongst them. We complement this with concentric layers of security by taking the same intelligent AI solutions and putting them onto existing video cameras, any IP-enabled camera, whether that's on the schools, whether it's on the stadiums, whether it's in commercial properties, whether it's in downtown locations where the local police departments are trying to get more insights and information as part of smart city initiatives. And with that solution, we can detect weapons in the open, crowds, fight disturbance, crowd counting, fights, these sorts of things, anomalous behaviors that may not be the norm, and that can actually trigger that there's an action needed to stop something before it escalates. You can think of a combination of something like looking at the density of a crowd together with the agitation level and saying, this is a predictor that this is a problem that could occur, like the unfortunate events in Astroworld. And as fans become more and more unruly, as we see more and more of that social unrest spilling over to these kinds of populated environments, this provides an opportunity to see things before they occur and actually take preemptive action. All this is married together on top of our AI platform. This is the core intelligence, the spine of the solution, if you will, the nervous system that gathers lots of data and insights, not only from our platform, but we can ingest from other platforms, social media platforms, other technologies, and provide a holistic view to a stadium of this is what's going on. A dashboard, if you will, of insights and information so that they can take specific actions based on intelligent analytics that'll tell you there's a problem exactly here to be addressed. So now you have the digitally enabled security staff and the digitally enabled marketing staff, the digitally enabled operations staff. As we think about what that platform offers to us and that AI platform, I like to think in terms of when someone first engages. I'm going to an NFL game and I think about buying a ticket. Understanding who that person is, what their credentials are, have they been banned before? Do they have valid, ticketing? Do they have valid, credit cards and these things? How do I start to gather information so I can create the best patron experience and the maximum security with digital insights early? As they approach the venue, I can start to think about how do I engage? Are there a corrective action I need to take because this person's been banned? Or is it positive action I need to take because this person is a VIP and I want to treat them differently? Upon entry, right now, the average person stops for a COVID check, stops for a ticket check, stops for a weapons check. It's a terrible experience. Think about a scenario where you walk right in, and I'm walking into this multi-billion-dollar entertainment venue, entertainment experience, and everything is checked at walking speed. Inside the premise, the digital insights can actually optimize that patron experience as well as optimizing operations and security. What does this mean in terms of what we see as our future revenue streams? And how do we get our unfair share of the multi-billion-dollar marketplace that we're playing into? Today, our revenues are primarily being driven by our patron gateway. This is the primary thing that most of the customers are looking for. As a good friend of mine has often said, keep the main thing the main thing. Replace those tens of millions of dollars of old, antiquated walk-through metal detectors with a fast, frictionless experience. When we marry that together with our AI platform with software that provides digital insights. In the future, to the chart that we just saw earlier, there's a world of opportunities to layer more on top of that platform to drive more and more software value on top of our incumbency with these stadiums. That is a SaaS recurring software model that we're very pleased that we're going to be enjoying. Our journey to get here. For the first 4 or 5 years of the history of the company, it was about sort of testing the marketplace, exploring different technologies. We had a vision of what we were trying to do, but this is complex technology. This is not easy. There's many people who tried and failed. And so for the first number of years, the company was focused on raising money and acquiring assets, such as the AI capabilities of 2 companies extracting AI. I joined the company in November of 2020. And we took, again, as I mentioned, we took a look at all the inventory and all the assets that we had. And we said, let's get our business strategy carefully lined up and very, very hyper-focused. We rebuilt the executive team to those who have experience in delivering startup companies like this and having great success. We got the team hyper-focused and the roadmap very, very well defined. And we delivered a security-specific solution for purpose-built for our target segment and our target marketplace. Going forward, as we look through some of these milestones, we will continue to see the growth that we saw in some of the prior charts. My expectation is that we're going to see acceleration of that growth rate. The inbound interest is significant. We expect to receive that first league certification very shortly, and we expect others to follow quickly behind that. We will be releasing our purpose-built multi-sensor gateway solution that is going to get us more traction within our target segment and the adjacent segments through the next generation of the multi-sensor gateway that's more purpose-built for those other market spaces. We'll start to see more and more integration, as I mentioned, about other types of technologies and other capabilities. So we have a broader offer to drive the whole patron experience upon entry into the building. This chart's a little bit out of date. As of October 31st of last year, there's been some acceleration in our share price over the last couple of weeks. I think as we're starting to see more and more announcements and more activity with the customers, there's been a lot more interest. The vision has been there. The promise of what we can do has been there. We're now executing with that hyper focus, and we're starting to see the results of that, and the market is recognizing that. I'm very, very pleased and very blessed with the team that we have on board. Every one of the individuals here are experts who have gone through this journey that we're going through right now. So they have all the lessons learned, they have all the battle scars, and they have all the experience, and they work very, very well together. We're complementing this executive team with a very robust board who are expert practitioners in their specific functional area. Folks who are very good at governance, folks who are very good at finance and financing, folks who are very good at security, folks who are very good and expert practitioners with operational experience. These folks are the board that I use to run my ideas. They're a great sounding board for me as we drive this strategy. We continue to think about how we accelerate the business. In summary, thinking back to our first chart, our overall executive summary, our narrative here of the difference that we can make, and again, why I think investors should be highly interested in Patriot One. We're playing in a significant and growing addressable market, one where there's already budgets and spending occurring, and this is a shift in spending to a better solution that has a better outcome and a positive ROI. They're very, very high barriers to entry. This is complex technology, and part of those barriers to entry are certain specific capabilities that we uniquely deliver. And because of that, we can digitally disrupt this marketplace. The technology and our ability to address certain kinds of things, very simple example, to detect knives, which is a requirement of 3 of the pro sports leagues, has been validated and proven through the testing with NCS4. This gives us a unique competitive advantage, and therefore the kind of growth that we're seeing with all the inbound interest that's coming to us. In the future, I see building on the incumbency that we'll establish with multiple revenue streams as we start to expand into different market segments, and we add more value on top of the incumbency we have with our existing customers. This will all be delivered as a SaaS business model, which again has the kind of predictability and scalability for revenues that the marketplace enjoys. But again, the most compelling thing to me is the fact that we can actually deliver a very compelling outcome to our customers and an ROI to support that. Thank you for listening today. And Will, I'm going to turn it back to you. I believe we had a number of questions come in. I can see them popping up on the chat boards here as we're talking. So I'm going to turn it over to you if we can walk through some of those questions.
Absolutely. And thank you, Peter. It's a very thorough and insightful presentation. We're now moving to the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you're interested in asking a question or logged into the Zoom app or the web platform, you can submit your questions directly through the Q&A module. And Peter, as you said, we've had some questions rolling in as you were providing your presentation. So let's just get started. The first one here is, how should investors look at the revenue model, the backlog versus revenues?
It's a great question. We get this one often, quite often, Will. You know, I would say approximately 75% of our customers tend to purchase on a SaaS basis. There are those who want a more traditional model where they buy up front and pay annual maintenance and warranties. But as a SaaS model, typically over a 36-month contract, with recurring annual renewals, we will book an order. And so I would encourage people to look at bookings first. That's the true measure of growth of the business. And we'll start to see as we progress with that contract over the 36 months, we'll recognize revenue as we continue to deliver. So the bookings backlog is a reflection of the fact that the bulk of the customers are buying from us, but they're buying on a SaaS-based model.
Great, thanks, Peter. The next question is, what are some of the ways you've refined your product base over the years based on customer feedback?
Interesting question. I'm a big believer in, listening to the customer and developing a product they want. Too often technology companies start with an inside out approach. They have a great idea around innovation and they try and take it to the marketplace and they have technology looking for a problem. When we came on board, the first thing I did was get out on the road with customers and say, tell me what you need. What takes us from a nice to have to a must have? And working with those pro leagues, they gave us a punch list. Sometimes very, very simple things. I'd like an audible alert when someone walks through and they have a weapon, which, initially you think that's not that compelling. But when you get embedded in the security operations and you watch how the staff really works, particularly when we saw that first chart with all that cluster of people, sometimes the simplest of features are incredibly important. So we created those punch lists with the league. Part of the conversation was, if I do this for you, will you approve me? And we started knocking off that punch list one by one by one by one to get to the point we're at today.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. The essence of the questions is the new management team has done a lot of great work to improve the company's reputation in the marketplace and turn the company around. How can the company capitalize on this momentum?
Wow, that's great. The interesting thing about this marketplace, I'm at an event called the Stadium Managers Association today here in Florida. And the interesting thing about this marketplace is it's very tight. Everyone knows everyone. They all talk, they all share news, they all share, it's amazing to me how I walk down the hall and someone will say, hey, Peter, I was talking to Tim and he told me about you. Our name is getting out there. And what we're doing to capitalize it is, as we've rebuilt our brand as the trusted solution for customers, as the one that's got high integrity, high honesty, willing to be transparent with activities like the NCS4, we're engaging these organizations and we're working with them to go on site, do pilots, understand their business model, understand the security operations model, and build a model for them so that they become very comfortable with the outcomes they could achieve by working as a partner with us. So we're capitalizing on the brand that's now out there, that's going through all the back channels to all those CSOs. And now they're saying, yes, we do wish to work with you. You've proven to us that you're a trusted resource. So that's happening. It's happening as quickly as possible by taking advantage of events like this.
Great, thanks. Next question. Are there any new large customers that are in the near-term pipeline?
Yes, I'm very pleased to say there's many new large customers who are in the near-term pipeline. I'm very comfortable with our backlog of quality opportunities. The pipeline continues to grow every single day. I was at an event on Saturday. We're already putting a proposal together for that customer. So the momentum is there. Can I announce anyone specifically? No, of course not. We have NDAs with those organizations. We respect those NDAs. It's part of how we're building our brand around integrity. At the right time, when we've completed the deployments with them and they're comfortable talking to the marketplace about those deployments, we'd be happy to announce those.
Great, thanks. And just so everyone knows, I'm participating, that I am trying to combine as many questions as possible given the amount of questions. So
I think I can see 41 new questions already.
I know. So there are a number of questions on this subject. It's really around capital raise. So discuss your cash position and your need for capital going forward. And maybe one question was, are you targeting institutional investors going forward?
So there's sort of 2-3 ideas in there. So let me see if I can address them all well. First off, we have put out a shelf prospectus, with the option to give ourselves the flexibility to take in cash if and as we want. What the structure of that may or may not look like, I can't really speak to at this point in time, but it provides us the opportunity to think through any potential, interest in putting money into Patriot One. So, we will always look to do the right thing for the shareholders. If we need cash to come in and accelerate the momentum that we're already gaining, because of SaaS opportunities that the cash flow is going to, occur over time, we will take that in. But we'll do that judiciously. To maximize the shareholder value as we go forward. In terms of, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question? Well,
are you going to, are you looking to expand your shareholder base to more institutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Our shareholder base right now is primarily retail investors. And the intent of conversations like this is to introduce Patriot One to a broader institutional investor organizations, and have them understand the momentum we're on, the trajectory we're on, and look to their interest in investing in or acquiring shares of Patriot One.
Great, thanks, Peter. This next question, again, captures several questions that are out here, but does Patriot One have the staffing and organization to handle a surge of orders?
It's a very good question. With the activities that we're running in terms of certifying the products, engaging with various organizations, pro sports organizations and things like this, in parallel, we also built out our capacity in two areas. One, in terms of manufacturing and supply chain, working with and developing relationships with two subcontract manufacturers. We've gone through business modeling on best case, worst case, and accelerated case, and we have the capacity to address the demand that might occur in the manufacturing requirements for the accelerated case. So I'm very comfortable in terms of addressing the demand from a manufacturing point of view. In terms of servicing and selling to the customers, we've got a core group of sales individuals and sales technologists who are here, but we're also expanding our partner base with specific and intentionally recruiting certain partners who we believe are best aligned to this hyper-focused strategy. We don't want every partner. We want those who are very aligned to the target marketplace we're going after and who can bring things like the consulting skills that has helped set up the operations for these organizations, the staffing to help drive the solutions and install the solutions. So we've got a set of partners who can scale with that accelerated case, and we've got the manufacturing capability to scale. We will also continue to hire as we see more and more demand, and we've created sort of checkpoints and milestones that when we hit this in terms of bookings, now time to hire more individuals.
Thanks. The next question, I believe you did touch on in your presentation. However, we had some questions coming in, so I think it might be worth expanding what the vision for scaling your technology is for widespread practical use.
Yep.
And goal for being in more public buildings.
Yep. It's a very good question. And we do see this a lot from our investors, go after schools, shopping malls, churches, X, Y, Z. Again, the path to success for any startup company is to not try and be everything to everyone, because in so doing, you become nothing to anybody. You're sort of partially addressing one organization's needs, partially addressing another. Every one of those different segments has different needs in the product, in the security operations, in the channels to get to them. As an example, selling to schools is incredibly difficult. There's 10 different decision makers who are involved, from the state to the local governments, to the police organizations, to the PTA, to you name it. So we're staying hyper-focused on that place where we can be a dominant player. I'd rather be a 70% market share of a $4 billion market than a 1% also ran in multiple markets. So we're going to stay hyper-focused. And as we see the engine growing, as we see the referenceability growing, more customers willing to be testimonials, willing to be references and things like that, we'll start to move into adjacencies and we'll expand the product capabilities to bring in those incremental features that make the product now very well suited, not okay, but perfectly suited for the next segment, the next segment, and the next segment. We'll also bring in more partners who are specialized in those vertical markets. People who specialize in schools, people who specialize in manufacturing distribution, and have the depth of the relationships that they can walk right in and bring us right in with them. So, it's a very judicious strategy and very pragmatic strategy that we've laid in place to not try and bite off more than we can chew, but be dominant in one place and then move to the next and the next and the next. And again, like I said, with the pro organizations, getting to those organizations and understanding what do you exactly need from the product to ensure it's a must-have, not a nice-to-have. And so our roadmap reflects that, our partner strategy reflects that, right? And our go-to-market strategy reflects that kind of a kind of adjacency growth strategy.
Great. Then, and the last question that we have time for today is, are you considering, or would you consider a buyout or takeover from a larger corporation?
That's a very interesting question. I've been hired by the board, who's been essentially hired by all the investors to act on behalf of all the investors to maximize their value. Would we consider it? We have to consider it because we have a fiduciary responsibility to all the shareholders to examine any opportunity that comes to us. Now, if we think that's an appealing opportunity, we'll examine it. If it's not, we won't, right? Just like we would look at investors or issuing new shares or going to institutional investors, we will look at every opportunity and assess each one as a management team and as a board to ensure that what we're doing maximizes the value to the shareholders. Now, can we talk about those things? Of course not. Not until a deal is done, because that is essentially, confidential information.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Peter, and thanks everyone for joining. And I know we couldn't get to all the questions, so if there are questions that haven't been addressed, please feel free to email us at patriot1@rbmilestone. That's Patriot, the numeral 1@rbmilestone. And today's webinar recording will be on Patriot One's website very soon. So thanks again, Peter, and thanks for everybody for joining us. And that concludes today's webinar.
Well, thank you so much, Will.